we all know that human impact on the environment is immense. What might not be so well known is how early this human impact on the environment began, and what it means for the future biodiversity of our planet. On this note, I'd like to tell you about a new study recently published in the journal Cell, which analyzed the historical avian biodiversity of the islands of New Zealand. To give you a picture of what they're talking about here, here's a segment from their paper describing the evolutionary nature of New Zealand and its avian fauna. Quote, "A remarkable feature of New Zealand is that, unlike other large land masses, its vertebrate fauna has long been dominated by birds, many of which form highly distinct evolutionary lineages. The quaternary avifauna of New Zealand, often called a land of birds, includes examples such as a giant nocturnal parrot, the flightless moa, and the country's national bird, the kiwi. A characteristic feature of New Zealand is the taxonomic and ecological uniqueness of its bird clades, generally attributed to its prolonged geographical isolation and/or its ancient Gondwanan heritage. Compared to other similar-sized landmasses, there are relatively few species of land birds, non-aquatic birds, most of which are found nowhere else. The country harbors several groups forming deep, isolated phylogenetic branches, including the sister clade of parrots and passerines, and two endemic clades of paleognaths, kiwi and moa, the sister group to all other birds." Unquote. So New Zealand is like this region at the end of the world. It's very isolated, and because of this, it's been able to generate a wild kind of biodiversity, particularly among its bird species. However, when the humans arrived, their impact through hunting and pollution largely destroyed these bird populations. The Polynesian Maori peoples arrived about 700 years ago, and European settlers arrived around 250 years ago, give or take a few decades. And in this time period, the number of bird species has been roughly halved. Another third of the remaining bird species are threatened, and the long-term trends for New Zealand's avian biodiversity are really not looking good. This is the issue that the researchers of that recently published paper want to understand. They want to ask, quote, "How far have humans perturbed this unique and isolated biological assembly from its natural state? And how deep will the evolutionary impact be if currently threatened species go extinct?" Unquote. To answer these questions, they used molecular phylogenies, or DNA records that are used to construct a map of the genetic relatedness of specific bird families, genuses, and species. This gave them a detailed look into not just the avian biodiversity, but by applying this data to fossils, they could determine how fast new species of bird were evolving, and what the background rate of extinction was before human interference. They mapped out colonization events, radiation events, diversification patterns, and the magnitude of extinctions that each genus has experienced. Essentially, they generated a profoundly accurate history of New Zealand bird species, including rates of speciation and extinction. There was one thing that was immediately obvious from the data. The human impact is undeniably massive, having led to the extinction of quite literally half of the bird species, and the endangerment and near extinction of a non-trivial portion of those species that still remain in existence. So, to answer their questions, the researchers calculated how long it would take for New Zealand to re-evolve the avian biodiversity that it possessed before humans arrived. Basically, if humans went extinct, or at least left New Zealand alone, how long would it be before the avian biodiversity recovered to pre-human levels? The answers that they calculated are shocking and eye-opening, and they give us a stark look at how profoundly disruptive our civilization is for the rest of life here on Earth. They found that it would take 4 million years for New Zealand's avian biodiversity to recover to its pre-European colonist levels. So that's the recovery of about 250 years of human-caused damage, like hunting and sampling, pollution, and habitat loss. And all of that will require 4 million years for evolutionary processes to recover from, to regenerate that biodiversity. But to recover from the total 700 years of human interference, that recovery will take 50 million years. Assuming no further human interference, no further extinctions, which is far from a foregone conclusion, it will take 50 million years for the current bird species on New Zealand to evolve, diversify, and speciate to the point that they've recovered their pre-human biodiversity. I want you to think about this, because it's actually quite profound. In just a few centuries, we can inflict so much damage on the natural world around us that it will take tens of millions of years for evolution to heal the wounds. If you care about the life on this planet, if you care about biodiversity and the preservation of genetic lineages that have existed in their own right for tens, if not hundreds of millions of years, this study should be inarguable proof that our impact on this planet is grossly disproportionate and out of control. Consider that if this is the effect after less than 10 centuries, and it's only gotten worse as time has gone on and industry and urbanization has expanded, what do you think the next 10 centuries are going to look like? The next 5 centuries? The next century? What's going to happen to the Earth's biodiversity if trends like this continue? I hate to say it, but I think that it's entirely possible that within the next 10 centuries, if things don't change, the Earth could be a more or less barren wasteland, not unlike Mad Max. I don't think that potential reality is necessarily impossible. I actually think it's frighteningly plausible. So, for the sake of our civilization, and for the sake of our world, we need to change. We need to create more sustainable societies that don't savage the natural world we live in. Or else, one day, we will find ourselves among the ranks of the extinct. We will be the final victim of our impact on this planet.